Howdy folks, Kirsten here, and Nikon, or Nikon, have just officially announced the brand new Z6iii, the third generation of their Z6 mirrorless camera line. So after the Z9 and Z8, how much technology has trickled down to the Z6iii, and how does it stack up against its main competitors, the Canon R6 II and Sony's A7 IV? Well, that's what we're going to find out right after this. As always, I'm your host, Kirsten Lutz, and before we get into it, I've got one thing to ask of you. I've noticed that over 65% of our viewers on YouTube are not actually subscribed to this channel. I mean, come on people, you can really help me out by hitting that subscribe button, just one click. That's all it takes. So, let's jump right into it. The Z6iii has just been announced literally a few minutes ago. So what I'll do is I'll take you through the release and highlight the most important bits for you. And whilst I'm doing that, I'll give you the lowdown on how the Z6iii compares to its main competitors. Sounds cool? All right, let's do it.
Wow, photographing the way I do, but with my colors, this will change everything.
I got to see each frame, each position of its wing, and they're so beautiful that I have never seen before.
Being able to move quickly and working at my brain's pace and getting those shots in the moment. Having this camera allows you to go out and create the way you want to create.
Until you use it, you cannot even imagine what you have missed.
It's something I've never seen before in my entire life. It's something totally different.
Nikon Z6iii. Outperform.
The Z6iii is much more than just a generational update. It's a major leap forward for the Z6 line. This camera inherits a lot of the technology from our professional mirrorless models. The response we received to the Z8 and Z9 have been overwhelmingly positive, and we're thrilled to see the stunning imagery that our customers are creating every day with those cameras.
Okay, that's a great point to stop right there. Now, the question is, from the outset, how much technology has trickled down from the Z9 and the Z8 down to the Z6 series? Well, I guess we're about to find out.
In developing the Z6iii, we wanted to put as many of the Z8 and Z9's powerful features in the hands of even more users, from photo and video enthusiasts to professional photographers and filmmakers. These features include a high-performance electronic shutter, incredibly advanced autofocus system, and pre-release capture, just to name a few.
Advanced autofocus system? Well, we can only hope that it has, that it has inherited the best parts of the Z9 and the Z8. That was a massive advancement especially from the original Z6, where the autofocus was pretty terrible. The Z6 II, actually, it's not bad. I'm filming with the Z6 II right now. It's one of my main cameras that I use. The autofocus tracking is pretty good. Is there room for improvement? Hell yes. Anybody who's tried out the Z8 or the Z9 will know that there's been a massive leap. So it sounds like we're seeing the Z8 and the Z9's autofocus system in the Z6iii, which is a massive relief.
But that's not all. The Z6iii outperforms cameras in its class even further with internal 6K RAW recording.
All right, great news for all video shooters right there. We've gone from 4K to 6K, which is amazing. Bearing in mind, nobody ever really delivers anything in 6K, but it does mean that you get more resolution and you can basically zoom in a lot more. So you can kind of crop in your final edit, and that comes with a whole range of great advantages. Bigger files also means, more storage space, more computing power required. So I'm not going to be using 6K anytime soon, really, for a lot of stuff, but it's good to have it.
HD video up to 240p.
All right, slow motion, 240 frames per second. That's great.
Plus a brand new ultra bright, ultra detailed electronic viewfinder.
Okay, let's talk about the viewfinder for a second. Now, I've pulled out some numbers. If we compare the electronic viewfinder here with, for instance, the Z8 or the Canon R6 II or the Sony A7, actually what Nikon have done is they've really boosted the resolution on that viewfinder. We've got 5.76 million dots on this one. Really, the Z6 II, the Z8, the Canon R6 II, and the Sony A7, actually, not the Sony A7, they really all have 3.69 million dots in the viewfinder. So that's a massive improvement. It's going to give you a brighter image. It's going to look just so much better. The Sony A7 IV, by the way, slightly disappointing. That's just over 1 million dots. So that viewfinder, I think, in a direct comparison between the Canon R6 II and everything that Nikon's got out at the moment, the Sony A7 IV by a country mile it probably has really the worst looking electronic viewfinder on paper. But if you're shooting an A7 IV, get in touch and let me know if I'm wrong, but that's what it looks like.
And all in a compact, full-frame body built to the same exacting standards of durability as our professional models.
The Z6iii, it's unlocked so many more possibilities for anyone that likes capturing action.
The clarity, especially in low light, offers me more of an edge over other cameras.
6K, 60 frames per second, internal RAW.
Okay, 6K internal RAW. So that was one of the major gripes with the Z6 II, was the fact that you could only shoot RAW to an external recorder. So you had to have another thing like, a Ninja or something like that, an external recorder that you had to mount onto your tripod or onto your gimbal or whatever in order to be able to shoot at those resolutions. It's a pain in the neck. Canon users have been able to do it in camera. Sony users have been able to do it in camera. For some reason, with the Z6 II, that didn't happen. Probably because they were using this double entendre of two XP 6 processors in the camera. Maybe that was the reason. But with this one, not a problem. Everything's happening in camera. That's a major relief. And it's going to save me having to spend yet another 500 quid on an external monitor. Perfect.
Upgraded, absolutely stunning results.
That much information captured by a camera that is so small, it's such a powerful combination.
It's a game changer. I could capture every single detail.
The improvement of autofocus just makes shooting easier. You can really stay with the action.
The form factor and raw capability of the Z6iii is a great asset for filmmakers.
Okay, let's talk video autofocus for a second. The original Z6 was abysmal. The Z6 II, which was really a massive improvement in terms of video autofocus, but still, once you've shot with a Z8 or a Z9, then you really realize what a massive improvement those cameras were. So for that autofocus, especially video autofocus technology to trickle down to the Z6iii is a great advantage. So hopefully, it'd be interesting to see a direct comparison actually and measure it. But I'd be interested to see how that stacks up against the Canon autofocus or Sony's. But I'm almost certain that it's pretty much there.
I've never seen a mirrorless that shoots this amazing slow motion. 240 frames per second is incredible.
It has so much color information, such a high dynamic range. It made my jaw drop.
240 frames per second at 1080. So at full HD, not at 6K. Just putting it in there.
You can capture the same high quality image as a bigger cinema camera.
It's just a really exciting time in photography.
This is a fantastic camera for someone who's looking to elevate their video production.
Nikon makes cameras for the creatives of the future.
The first word that comes to mind when talking about the Z6iii is performance. The key to its incredible power is a world's first partially stacked CMOS sensor. This unique sensor is undoubtedly the single most impactful addition to this camera. Its main benefit is a big improvement in the speed with which data can be read out. The combination of a partially stacked sensor and an XSpeed 7 processor is what makes the Z6iii's incredible performance and advanced photo and video features possible. When tracking fast, erratically moving subjects in constant motion, you need autofocus that you can rely on to keep up with the action. The autofocus system in the Z6iii is inherited from the Z9 and delivers performance around 20% faster than the previous generation Z6 II. Using Nikon's deep learning technology, the system's been designed to automatically detect and distinguish between 9 specific subjects with face and eye detection for both people and animals. The Z6iii can even accurately detect human faces as small as just 3% of the frame. Subject detection works with auto area AF, wide area AF, subject tracking AF, and 3D tracking.
Okay, 3D tracking is back. That was something that for some reason had disappeared from the Z6 II. It's something that's very common in DSLR models like the D750, for example, or D850. For some reason, that was discontinued, but it's back, which is great news. But just another little thought on the autofocus, especially on the subject detection. So we're now in the same league as the Canon R6 II, which has had that feature for a while. I'm talking about humans, animals, cats, dogs, airplanes, cars, all that kind of stuff. So all of these features are now found in the Z6iii as well, which is great. The Z6 II, I think it was animals and humans. So major improvement there.
All newly added to the Z6 line. Also new is custom wide area AF, which lets you precisely define the coverage of the focus point yourself, depending on your needs.
Okay, that's actually great news. So I'll just explain the difference there. So the custom area autofocus comes in handy when you're, let's say, using eye tracking, for example, but you're actually filming a crowd of people. Let's say you're at a concert or you're anywhere where there's a crowd of people. The problem with eye autofocus is that it will lock onto just about any eye and it will just get confused. But if you can narrow down the area that you want your camera to search for an eye, then your autofocus will lock on much more reliably. And if you can now custom define the size of that area, that's even better. So that's a definite improvement.
In electronic shutter mode, the Z6iii can shoot full resolution 24 megapixel JPEGs at up to 60 frames per second, and 10.6 megapixel JPEGs at up to 120 frames per second. RAW shooters can capture NEF files at up to 20 frames per second with virtually no blackout to interrupt the view through the EVF. Not only is it fast, but the Z6iii can also keep taking pictures continuously, either in JPEG or RAW mode, for as much as 1,000 frames.
Okay, 60 frames per second. That brings it really pretty much in line with the Canon R6 II. The Canon R6 II, I think it's up to 40 frames per second, but it'll definitely it'll beat the Sony A7 IV, hands down. The maximum frame rate there was like 10 frames per second. So if you're a sports shooter, or if you're like shooting wildlife, then I think the Z6iii is now giving you a camera that will allow you to really get a great shot.
In addition to faster continuous shooting, the electronic shutter also unlocks extremely high shutter speeds, up to 1/16,000th of a second, short enough to freeze even the quickest action.
Up to 1/16,000th of a second with the electronic shutter. Now, some people are going to hate the fact that Nikon have gotten rid of the mechanical shutter, and there are potentially some disadvantages. That being said, that is clearly the way Nikon are going. So, so the advantages are, well, we get higher shutter speeds. So 1/16,000th of a second, that is twice as fast as both the Canon R6 II and the Sony A7 IV. They max out at 1/8,000th of a second, 1/8,000th of a second. The Z8, however, 1/32,000th. That's one of the things I need to learn how to pronounce. Anyhow, let's.
Fleeting moments such as when a bird first takes flight or peak action in sports are always difficult to predict. When you're trying to capture action that you can't anticipate, pre-release capture can help you get those moments. It essentially extends your reaction time by buffering images a full second before you fully press the shutter. You'll be able to get the image you thought you missed, even if you press the shutter a fraction of a second after the action's happened. With a native sensitivity range of 100 to 64,000 ISO, you have a lot of creative options, even in very dark conditions like a performance space or for night photography.
Okay, 100 to 64,000 ISO. Well, I mean, that's pretty decent. It's an improvement on the R6 II. It's trailing way behind the Z8, although the Z8 goes down to 64 and up to, 25,600. But the Canon R6 II, that's 100 to 102,400. So as far as ISO is concerned, with the R6 II, well, it's a little bit ahead of the Z6iii at this point. But when it's only A7 IV, well, it's 100 to 51,200. Just thought I'd bring that in.
And in starlight view mode, the Z6iii can still autofocus and provide live view for framing and composition down to an incredible -10 EV. Meanwhile, its 5-axis VR system gives you up to 8 stops of built-in vibration reduction image stabilization.
Okay, 8 stops, again, that's a major improvement on the 5 stops that we had in the Z6 II. And actually, it's really, again, it brings it on par with the Canon R6 II, which also has an 8-stop IBIS built in. So that's great news for video creators in particular, I think. And being able to shoot handheld at slower shutter speeds, again, that's going to help you out there. The Sony A7 IV, well, 5 is basically 5-axis sensor, 5.5 stops, so pretty much standard. So again, Sony a little bit behind on that, but Nikon catching up with Canon on this one.
The Z6iii also includes our latest focus point VR technology. This works in combination with the camera's autofocus system to optimize stabilization of your intended subject, which is especially useful if your subject is at the edges of the frame. To unlock the full power of the Z6iii sensor for filmmaking, video shooters have the option of full frame internal 6K RAW, until now a feature most often found in high-end cinema cameras. Nikon's NRAW format gives you both peace of mind and maximum latitude when it comes to editing, whether you're adjusting exposure or color temperature in scenes with changing light. In addition to NRAW, filmmakers also have the option of recording in ProRes RAW format, and non-RAW video can also be recorded up to 5.4K. Because it's all recorded internally to your CF Express Type B card, there's no need for any bulky or expensive external accessories.
That's what I mentioned earlier. That's it's a massive advantage, and it's something that, again, Sony and Canon users have been well used to. Not having to fork out for an external recorder is, well, I think that should be the standard, really. Anyway, full raw video in body. Way to go, Nikon.
And thanks to the Z6iii's powerful image stabilization system, footage can also be very effectively stabilized in camera. Taken together, that's an incredible level of agility for filmmakers who need a lightweight, compact setup. And those are far from the only professional video features in this camera. The Z6iii also offers a huge amount of control over video frame rates, up to 60p in 6K RAW, 120p in 4K, and even 240p in Full HD with only a 5% crop. That's Nikon's highest video frame rate ever in a full-frame camera, and the highest in its class.
Okay, 120 frames per second in 4K actually beats the Canon R6 II hands down. 60 frames per second at 4K is the max there, I think. Same with the Sony. So as far as 4K shooters are concerned, 120 frames per second, that's some super smooth slow-mo right there. But if you're shooting in HD or 1080, you can bring that down to 240 frames per second. So that should be fantastic. I want to see that.
The Z6iii includes a 3.2-inch 2100 dot fully articulating touchscreen and various in-camera monitoring tools, including waveform and zebra displays.
Thank the Lord. Finally, Nikon have caught on to the fully articulated flippy screen. Oh my God, that's been years in the way. I have no idea why they insisted on this tilt screen on the Z6 II. I'm not saying it's useless, but it is pretty pointless. Everybody else has been doing fully articulated flip screens for absolutely forever. And also Nikon isn't new to that, because even, 10 years ago, they had fully articulated screens on things like the D5600, for example. I mean, it wasn't a problem then. I don't really understand how it's been that much of an issue over the last 5 or 6 years with their mirrorless cameras. It makes absolutely zero sense. But finally, they've seen the light. The fully articulated flip screen is back. It makes perfect sense. If you're doing the kind of thing that I'm doing, like YouTube videos, podcasts, that kind of thing, I mean, having a fully articulated flip screen is an absolute must. It's standard. I mean, anyway, I could harp on about this forever, but it's here. Happy days. Hallelujah.
It also supports a range of professional accessories, including microphones, XLR adapters, Nikon's MCN10 remote grip, and the Atomos UltraSync Blue. And in a first for a Nikon camera, the Z6iii adds an audio line-in input, enabling a connection to external professional audio sources such as mixing boards. We believe that as a filmmaking tool, the Z6iii is unrivaled in the market, ideally suited to shooting everything from weddings and events.
Okay, I mean, line input, okay, fine. What's going to be interesting here is to actually to check out the quality of the preamp, the audio preamp inside of the camera, because so far in most cameras of that class, the quality of that preamp's usually, well, what's a nice way of saying that? It's just not very good. So you're always better off recording on a separate device and just simply using the in-camera audio as a reference audio. But I don't know. I haven't had the Z6iii in my hands just yet. I haven't been able to actually try it out, but that'll be one of the first things I check as far as audio is concerned, is actually how these preamps stack up. My suspicion is you probably still need an external recorder, but there you go.
To documentaries, sports, music videos, and independent films. Versatile, flexible, and packed with pro features, this camera is a 1.7-pound, compact, cinematic powerhouse.
When Mitch approached me about the project, we started talking about doing something involving dance.
It's time for the first shot of the day. Got our Nikon Z6iii.
It's a small body camera, so we could move really fast, and we could be on tripod, then we could move to the gimbal, and Mitch could really easily move around the dancers.
Being able to have multiple copies of the camera makes flowing through a very busy shoot schedule a lot more manageable. One powerful thing about this camera is that it can shoot 6K internally at 12-bit RAW. The ability to just use a slider to adjust the color temperature is such an asset.
We had natural light for most of the day, and then we shot from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., so the light changed, and now we have the flexibility to make it even in post.
What's the highest we can do in 4K? 120. Yeah, let's do it. Nikon has a very prestigious legacy for their optics. The vintage Nikon lenses give a tactile quality to the image that I think gives the viewer an emotional connection to the characters they're looking at on screen. The softness of the focus roll-off really brings the viewer's eyes to the focal point of the frame to be. The lens has a lot to do with the way that somebody connects to a character on screen through their eyes.
Something we talked about with this was really focusing on POV and the main character's perspective, and we have a lot of POV shots, or shots that are in her point of view, and that was really important to us too.
So for this scene, we're using the 58mm Noct Nikkor. It's pretty amazing how sharp this lens is, even at a 0.95. I'm impressed.
At £8,000 or something of that sort, what can you expect?
For me, my favorite part of shooting on the Z6iii was definitely the colors, the color palette. We had a really diverse group of dancers, and they were all amazing, and the way the camera rendered everyone's skin tones was beautiful. This is my first time working with a Nikon camera, and it was a great shoot day, and it was a really great experience.
Whatever you're shooting, you'll see a big difference in the Z6iii's electronic viewfinder. It offers class-leading 5760 K-dot resolution and a world's first in a mirrorless camera, DCI P3 equivalent color gamut, which means highly accurate reproduction of delicate shades, especially greens and reds.
Greens and reds. Reminds you of Kodak film stock? Anyone? Well, again, I mentioned it at the beginning, that electronic viewfinder is really in a class of its own. It sounds pretty amazing. They've really upped the resolution, and that really beats everything else that's in that class at the moment. So that'll be very interesting to see. I'm looking forward to experiencing that.
Not only will you experience more accurate colors, but you'll also notice a huge jump in brightness, 4 times brighter than the Z6iii. A brighter viewfinder means more accurate preview of tones when shooting in HLG high dynamic range modes, and a more lifelike immersive viewfinder experience.
And that being said, the viewfinder in the Z6iii and likewise in the Canon R2 and so on, I mean, they're pretty good already. So again, quite impressed.
That feeling of immersion and a lifelike view is helped even further with a 120 FPS refresh rate option. That's more detail, more color accuracy, greater dynamic range, and a smoother view than any other camera in its class. A first for Nikon cameras, the Z6iii is compatible with the new flexible color picture control inside Nikon's free NX Studio software. This feature enables you to use NX Studio's powerful color blender and color grading tools to design your own picture controls, which you can then upload to the Z6iii via memory card.
That's straight out of the Fuji playbook. I like it, actually. That's a fun thing to do. I'm not sure how useful that is going to be in a professional sense, but it's definitely a nice thing to play around with, especially if you're out shooting street photography or shooting straight to JPEG or whatever. This could be a cool thing. But this next feature is potentially super awesome.
What if you could transfer full resolution photos from your camera to a cloud storage service through a Wi-Fi connection? Perhaps you want to get your photos quickly to an editor or client, or maybe you want your friends and family to be able to access them easily using their preferred cloud storage platform. Introducing Nikon Imaging Cloud.
Now that is the future, and I think Nikon are really ahead of the game here. That is super useful when you're working with clients, art directors, and so on and so forth. Or if you just want to get that stuff up in the cloud so you can edit it on your iPad or whatever else. So that, for me, is actually one of the, well, it's definitely in the top 10 of the best features in this camera. I like it a lot.
A new camera to cloud service, which enables you to send photos from the Z6iii wirelessly to Dropbox, Google Drive, Microsoft OneDrive, or Nikon Image Space. The MBN14 is a new vertical grip for the Z6iii that duplicates shooting controls and provides room for an additional ENEL15 series battery, almost doubling the amount of power available for extended shoots. For even greater flexibility when working remotely, the Z6iii can be charged and powered over USB using a compatible third-party external battery or power bank.
Powering via USB-C is super useful. I do all the time, virtually every day. Every time I'm filming, that camera is basically USB-C powered, so I don't have to worry about batteries going down or whatever. Running out of juice is a thing of the past, and that is a major relief. So again, I think it's pretty standard. The Z6 II could do it. I wouldn't have expected anything less, to be honest with you.
The body of the Z6iii is constructed from a combination of magnesium alloy and Cerebo material. This combination provides high impact resistance while keeping the weight down. As well as being physically tough, both the Z6iii and its accompanying MBN14 grip are dust and moisture sealed to the same level as the Z8 and can operate down to minus 10 degrees Celsius or 14 degrees Fahrenheit. To help prevent accidental damage, the in-camera vibration reduction system is locked in place when the camera is turned off, just like our professional mirrorless models. In addition to its premium build, the Z6iii is a very capable camera for professional use. And with a similar menu system and button layout, it can be used seamlessly alongside a Z8 or Z9.
Okay, that's been the most... Okay, that for the most part was the announcement. That's just followed by some behind-the-scenes shots, which I think, we can spare ourselves here. Now, what's the conclusion? First of all, there's a whole plethora of amazing new features in this camera. Without a shadow of a doubt, it has put Nikon back on the map. I really like the Z6 II. This one has taken some of those features and literally hit them out of the ballpark. Autofocus, amazing. Video autofocus, fantastic. A better viewfinder, a brighter, more vibrant viewfinder. That's very cool. The X-Speed 7 processor, straight out the Z8 and the Z9. That's amazing. Faster processing, higher resolution, 6K shooting. The list is almost endless. 8-stop IBIS, phenomenal. So I really can't wait to get this camera into my hands. Am I going to upgrade from the Z6 II to the Z6 III? Possibly. It's a distinct possibility. This sounds really good. I think for hybrid shooters, people who shoot video as well as stills photography, this is a really good option. And just generally anybody who's in that 24 megapixel kind of realm, this is a great option. If you need higher resolution, like if you really need 40, 50 megapixels, then this may not necessarily the camera for you. But, we've seen the Z8, we've seen the Z9, we've seen the Z6 III. What's missing? Well, it's the Z7 III. Clearly, they have a higher resolution camera, which most likely will have very similar video features and all the rest of it. And so if that's the camera you need, 40, 45 plus megapixels, then you just have to hang in there and possibly wait for the Z7 III to come out. But generally speaking, for your average video producer, YouTuber, and so on and so forth, this is a great camera. Again, flippy screen. What can I say? I mean, I've been harping on about this for years. And finally, somebody at Nikon has seen the light. So that alone is worth congratulating Nikon for. So, in a nutshell, this seems like an amazing camera. It really, it puts Nikon up there. In fact, ahead, I think in general, you could say ahead of the Canon's R6 II, definitely ahead of Sony's A7 IV. Sony have a number of things to improve on that one. Well, I was going to say, one thing that I didn't mention in this video that I know about is the fact that the HDMI port is now a full Type A HDMI output. Thank the Lord for that. So basically what I mean is on the Z6 II, we had I think it's called Type C. Cameras of that form factor, basically slightly smaller cameras, have traditionally always had smaller HDMI ports, probably to save space and so on and so forth. But it's a pain in the backside because you deal with adapters and all the rest of it. So having a full-size Type A HDMI output doesn't seem like much if you don't shoot video. Actually, it makes no difference if you don't shoot video. But for anybody shooting video, this is huge. If you want to use your camera as, a webcam, for example, or you run into a switcher, maybe use it with something like eCam for video podcasting, whatever. This really is a major, major advantage. That's one of the things that's always irked me with the Z6 III and virtually almost any other camera I've ever had. Same with the D750, the D850, I believe. Not quite sure about that. But anyway, full-size HDMI output. Nice one. They didn't mention it in the video. I can tell you it's there. Good news. Okay, folks, that is it for today. That was a quick run-through of the Nikon Z6 III's main features. What do you think? Is this the camera for you? Well, let me know in the comments below. In the meantime, consider supporting the channel on buymeacoffee.com/camerashake. That would be amazing. And of course, remember to check out the Camera Shake podcast every Thursday on all awesome podcast platforms and here on YouTube as well. See you then.